What happens when a young intern, full of dreams but burdened by fears, crosses paths with an undercover boss? What happens when the intern, unaware of the boss's true identity, opens up about his deepest insecurities? And what happens when the boss, moved by the intern's honesty, decides to change everything? This is a story of courage, vulnerability, and the unexpected twists that life throws at us. A story that will remind you that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to speak your truth. Elliot Parker was a 22-year-old intern at a mid-sized marketing firm called Brightstar. He had joined the company 3 months ago, fresh out of college, with a heart full of hope and a mind buzzing with ideas. But as the days turned into weeks, Elliot began to feel the weight of his insecurities. He was surrounded by people who seemed to have it all figured out, confident, talented, and always one step ahead. Elliot, on the other hand, felt like he was constantly playing catch-up. Elliot's desk was tucked away in a corner of the office, far from the hustle and bustle of the main work area. It was a quiet spot, but it also made him feel invisible. He often wondered if anyone even noticed him. His boss, Mr. Harold, was a stern man who rarely smiled and never seemed to have time for small talk. Elliot admired him from afar, but was too intimidated to approach him. One day, as Elliot was sipping his coffee and staring at his computer screen, a new face appeared in the office. The man introduced himself as Daniel, a new hire from another branch. He was friendly and approachable, and he quickly became a familiar presence in the office. Daniel often stopped by Elliot's desk to chat, asking him about his work and his life. Elliot found himself opening up to Daniel in a way he hadn't with anyone else at the office. It was a rainy afternoon when Elliot's world changed. He had been working late, trying to finish a project that was due the next day. The office was quiet, with only a few people still around. Daniel walked over to Elliot's desk and sat down, his usual friendly smile on his face. "You look stressed," Daniel said, his voice filled with concern. "Everything okay?" Elliot hesitated. He had been carrying a heavy burden for weeks, but he had never shared it with anyone. But there was something about Daniel's kind eyes that made him feel safe. I don't know if I'm cut out for this," Elliot confessed, his voice trembling. "I feel like I'm not good enough. Like I'm always making mistakes, and everyone else is so much better than me. I'm scared that I'll never succeed, that I'll always be stuck in this place, feeling like a failure." Daniel listened quietly, his expression thoughtful. When Elliot finished, Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Elliot, everyone feels like that at some point," Daniel said gently. "But the fact that you're here, working hard despite your fears, shows how strong you are. You have more potential than you realize. Don't let your fears hold you back." Elliot felt a lump in his throat. He had never expected such kind words from anyone, especially not from someone he had just met. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. The next day, Elliot arrived at the office to find a buzz of excitement. Mr. Harold had called an all-hands meeting, and everyone was speculating about what it could be about. Elliot took his seat, his heart pounding with anticipation. When Mr. Harold walked into the room, he was accompanied by Daniel. Elliot's eyes widened in surprise. What was Daniel doing here? "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Harold began, his voice serious. "I have an important announcement to make. As some of you may know, we've been facing some challenges as a company. To better understand these challenges, I decided to go undercover as a new hire. I wanted to see things from your perspective, to hear your thoughts and concerns without the barriers of hierarchy." Elliot's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Daniel, who gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Daniel is actually me," Mr. Harold continued. "And I have to say, this experience has been eye-opening. I've learned a lot about the struggles you all face, and I've been deeply moved by your honesty and dedication." Elliot felt a wave of emotions wash over him. He had confessed his deepest fears to the CEO of the company. He had been vulnerable in front of the one person he had always been too afraid to approach. As the meeting continued, Mr. Harold announced a series of changes that would be implemented based on the feedback he had received during his time undercover. He spoke about creating a more supportive work environment, offering mentorship programs, and providing more opportunities for growth and development. But the biggest surprise came at the end of the meeting. "Elliot Parker," Mr. Harold said, his eyes locking onto Elliot's. "Your honesty and courage have inspired me. I want you to know that your fears are valid, but they don't define you. You have a bright future ahead of you, and I believe in your potential. Starting today, you will be promoted to a full-time position, and you will be working directly with me on a special project." Elliot was speechless. He felt a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of purpose. He had been given a second chance, and he was determined to make the most of it. In the weeks that followed, Elliot threw himself into his new role with passion and determination. He worked closely with Mr. Harold, learning from his experience and gaining confidence in his abilities. The mentorship program that Mr. Harold had introduced became a source of support for many employees, including Elliot. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Elliot still had moments of self-doubt, but he had learned to face them head-on. He had realized that it was okay to be afraid, as long as he didn't let his fears control him. One day, as Elliot was walking out of the office, he ran into Daniel, or rather, Mr. Harold. They exchanged a warm smile. "Thank you," Elliot said, his voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." Mr. Harold placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. "You did this, Elliot. You had the courage to speak your truth, and that's what made all the difference. Remember, the bravest thing you can do is to be yourself." As Elliot walked away, he felt a sense of peace. He had faced his fears, and in doing so, he had found his strength. And he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would be ready to face them. This is the story of Elliot Parker, a young intern who dared to confess his deepest fears to an undercover boss. It's a story that reminds us that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to speak our truth. And that when we do, we open the door to unexpected opportunities and life-changing moments. So, the next time you find yourself facing your fears, remember Elliot's story. And remember, you are stronger than you think. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.